Both looked to Goering, the Luftwaffe chief, to win control of the air, vital for an invasion. And Goering believed the Luftwaffe on its own could knock out Britain. Arguments between the services went on for months. The army at first wanted to land 40 divisions on a wide front between Ramsgate and Lyme Bay and press onto a line from Malden in Essex to the Severn estuaries, sealing off London. This was later scaled down to a landing by 9 divisions between Folkestone and Brighton, supported by 2 airborne divisions, about 200,000 men in all. By September, Britain had overcome her earlier weakness and had 16 divisions available in the southeast. An invasion fleet drawn from all parts of Germany was assembled in northern ports. Landing craft were built and boats converted to carry troops and amphibious tanks. The army thought the fleet too small. The navy thought even that size fleet difficult to protect. Both agreed that air supremacy is vital. The invasion, codenamed Operation Sea Lion, was set for mid-September. The plans did not impress the Luftwaffe, on whom everything depended.
In my opinion, the plan was not serious. Especially the Navy didn't want to have the responsibility, and the Navy has asked the Air Force first and all to establish the absolute air superiority over the invasion area. And the preparations the Navy did, they were not very convincing. Also, our preparation, my wing especially, was destined to be one of the 2 wings to be transferred to England. And our preparations were about ridiculous. The Air Force was not trained and prepared to conduct an independent air war over England.
As the invasion fleet assembled, the Luftwaffe's first targets were merchant convoys and harbors, particularly in the narrow seas of the Channel. Dover became known as Hellfire Corner. There was always something for the newsreel camera or the news reporter, for instance, Charles Gardner of the BBC.
Well, now the Germans are dive bombing a convoy out into sea. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's one going down on his target now. Bomb. No, missed the ships. He hasn't hit a single ship. There are about 10 ships in the convoy, but he hasn't hit a single one. Because here they come an absolute steep dive. You can see their bombs actually leave the machines and come into the water. You can hear our own guns going like anything now. There's a fight going on. You can hear the little rattles of machine gun bullets. That was a bomb, as you may imagine. There's another bomb dropping. Yes, it's dropped. Oh, it missed the convoy. No, they haven't hit the convoy in all this. What? What? Yes, oh, we just hit a Messerschmitt. Oh, that was beautiful. He's coming right down now. I think definitely that first got him. Absolute steep dive. Let's move round so I can watch him a bit more. Here he comes. He's going slap into the sea, and there he goes. Smash! Oh, boy, I've never seen anything so good as this. The RAF fighters have really got these boys dead.
The convoy system was disrupted, and harbours like Dover were badly hit. But while the town suffered casualties, Dowding had not yet been forced to commit his full fighter strength.
The unique thing about Fighter Command was that when war broke out in September 1939, we had there a system covering the entire country for air defense. And that system was based on a radar, or as we used to call it in those days, RDF. And we had this chain of radar stations around the coast, and they were looking out up to 100 miles. And they were feeding on landlines all the information to the headquarters of Fighter Command.
Now, radar really won the Battle of Britain, because without it, we would have been doing standing patrols, and with a limited number of aircraft and a limited number of pilots, you couldn't have done it. As it was, we could wait on the ground, and then radar would watch, and through the various controls, we would be told to take off at a time when the Germans were massing over Calais or over Abbeville. And so therefore, we wasted no petrol, no time, no energy. In fact, we could sleep in between patrols, and then we'd take off and we would be directed towards the German formation, given height, distance, and their numbers, which is very important.
On August the 13th, Goering changed his tactics. He ordered an attack against radar stations and fighter airfields which Fighter Command was bound to defend. While German bombers blitzed airfields that defended London and southeastern England, their escorting fighters would deal with the British fighters that came up to attack the bombers. Fighting over England put the Luftwaffe at a disadvantage. It was expected, but not equipped, to win a decisive battle alone. The German bombers were not designed to carry a heavy enough bomb load. The German fighters carried only enough fuel to stay over England for half an hour, whereas the British fighters, close to their bases, could land and refuel quickly enough to rejoin the battle.
Our range was very, very limited, and we could only cover a small part of the British islands, including London. But over London, as an example, we could only stay for 10 minutes to come back to our bases. So this limited range of our fighters in the escort has been perhaps the main point which avoided an effective air offensive against Britain.
Luftwaffe intelligence misled its pilots about the damage done to British airfields in the first assault. They claimed 8 had been virtually destroyed. In fact, none had been knocked out, and those damaged were quickly patched up again. The German pilots, faced by resistance they hadn't expected, became pessimistic about winning the battle.
We, fighting crews, were convinced that we couldn't win the battle, and we couldn't force England to surrender by attacking without any operation from the part of the army or the navy. Therefore, we were asking that the High Command should order the invasion, the sea line.
A mere 1,400 British fighter pilots and their ground crews stood between Britain and invasion. Their responsibility was great, too great perhaps to bear thinking about. The face they showed the world was dashing and carefree.
I think they took the situation not the least bit seriously from the point of view of their lives generally. Some fellows would just kick a ball around or lie around, some would sleep, read paperbacks, listen to the radio, and that was our life. I wanted to shoot an aeroplane down, but I didn't want to shoot a German down. I really did not. We did hear stories of Germans shooting our fellows in parachutes, and we used to think that was pretty horrible, but we weren't sure whether it was true or not. I know I had an experience of a German aircrew getting draped over my own wing. He bailed out of a bomber and got caught on my wing with his parachute. And I was jolly careful to get him off as easily and as quickly as I could by yawing the aeroplane and shaking him off.
I'd say there was no chivalry at all. I mean, between the German Air Force and the British, I'd say absolutely none. Not as far as I was concerned. I hated them. They were trying to do something to us. They were trying to enslave us.
climax of the battle came at the end of August and in the first week in September. Upon the result depended Hitler's decision to launch his invasion. But the air battle itself was between a comparative handful of individuals on either side.
The fights were rather extraordinary in a way, because although there were a lot of aircraft about, suddenly when you were fighting a particular man, the sky became empty.
I don't think anyone ever considered that he would be killed. Death was something which was just put at the back of your mind. If it was not, then you'd have just got the jitters about it and been very worried. If a fellow did go missing, it was just poor old so-and-so, he's had it, and that was that. Inwardly, of course, you'd feel it tremendously if you lost a pal. But you didn't dwell on the subject of death at all.
Sometimes you could tell if a fellow was going to get killed, yes you could. He sort of lost it, you know. My greatest friend was killed. He was shooting down, or shooting at a Messerschmitt, and there was another Messerschmitt hit him from behind, and that was all. I was shouting at him, and you couldn't do anything. And you saw him go in. That affected you, but you had to get on with it. Your friends affect you deeply. Terrible. But you couldn't help it.
In the last week of August and the first week of September, 103 of Fighter Command's pilots died. 128 were seriously wounded. 6 key airfields in the southeast were put out of action for days at a time. Against the fire of German fighters and bombers, Britain was now losing fighters even faster than Germany, nearly 500 in 2 weeks.
The last week in August, the first week in September, those 2 weeks were the worst for us, because by that last week in August, the Germans had been pounding the airfields mercilessly. And the 31st of August was probably our worst day. Fighter Command was very nearly on its knees, and Dowding was very conscious of that. And this was what was worrying him, this constant pounding of the airfields, and he was wondering how much longer he could hold out. When I say he, I mean Fighter Command, because he was still having to face that big problem of denying the Germans air superiority, and yet here they were knocking the airfields to pieces with the threat of knocking out Fighter Command. On the 6th of September, the King and Queen visited Fighter Command, and there were quite a few people who commented on how tired Dowding appeared to be. The day after, the 7th of September, when an invasion alert was issued, invasion imminent, and all that day things were remarkably quiet. And all of us were beginning to wonder what the devil was going to happen next. And then late afternoon, the Germans launched what many of the pilots who in the air having to face this onslaught found to be just about the heaviest attack they'd ever known. And then came what Dowding later described as the miracle. The attack didn't go to the airfields, it went to London, and the airfields were spared.
5 minutes to 5, the sirens went. I'm walking out onto the veranda, my veranda, looking down the river. The sky was full of planes. Within a couple of minutes, the bombs started dropping in the Millwall dock, and I could watch them. And that's how it went on for some considerable time.
On that first Saturday, they practically obliterated from the Silvertown Way to Silvertown. As a matter of fact, the whole of the tidal basin, Custom House, right up to Silvertown was obliterated. Make no mistake about it.
If it had continued that type of bombing in the daylight,